Hey guys, welcome to the Dreadcuter Podcast.
If you want to know how to blast your opponent down to zero authority, come check us out.
Woo!
Woo!
Okay, so now we're going to talk about taking away cards, aka hate buying. It's a very specific technique. What it is, it's buying a card to make sure my opponent does not get it. This card might help your deck, it might not, and that's part of your analysis. But the main thing is, if my opponent gets it, it's too good. It's way too good for his deck, and that's what hate buying or taking cards away from your opponent is. And I think this is starting to get into like higher level intermediate thinking, is knowing your opponent's plan, realizing what cards are going to help them, and then saying, I cannot let them have that card. If your opponent is buying a lot of blobs, you should start getting those blobs and taking it away from them. So it helps your deck because you get damage, but more importantly, it keeps those good cards away from him. It mitigates the damage that he's going to do to you. You know, your opponent's buying scrapping, you can buy scrapping. Your opponent buys discards, you can buy discards. Your opponent buys healing and trade, you buy healing and trade. So you're sort of copying your opponent's strategy, but really what you're doing is you're making sure that they don't get to fully realize their strategy.
Yeah.
What do you think?
This is, I want to go back like a couple of years, when you started actually doing this strategy on me and like the rest of us, like, I was just like sneaky, like,
So sneaky.
because what it does is it takes away the advantage for the opponent. So if you have like just a little more trade and are able to just get all these cards from them, like that actually, like if we talk about the win percentages again, like not only are you keeping them down, you're actually slowly building and outpacing your opponent's like ability to realize their strategy, And so I think that is really it's number one, sneaky. Number two, actually really effective if you can do it like early on. If you see what your opponent's buying and you buy the one cost card that's, a card that's one cost better than that card, and you keep on building that, your opponent doesn't have the chance to synergize. Or you're keeping at least that down. And what that does is if you have a better deck than him than what he originally planned, then you're always going to win like 80% of the time. I would fathom.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I like what you said about breaking synergies, and that's pretty much what it does. Because your opponent, ideally, he's going to want to buy cards that work together. He's going to want to buy several cards that draw. He's going to want to buy several cards that deal damage. He's going to want to buy several cards the same color so he gets allied abilities, right? So if you are recognizing what his plan is and what he's doing, and you take those cards away, now he has to change. Now he has to go, oh, what else can I do? Like, I was trying to go damage, now I can't do it. I need to do something else. And especially for intermediate opponents, beginning to intermediate opponents, it's difficult to make that change, to make that switch. And so that is usually what throws people off, is they're like, oh, I'm going to go in and I'm going to buy all the healing and bases that I can, right? Well, oh, shoot, my opponent's doing that. Now I can't do it, but now I don't know what to do. Now I don't have a plan. And so what that also means is that you should get good at doing all the different archetypes of decks. So that way, if your opponent is going with a specific strategy, you can counter that strategy. If your opponent is going with a strategy and you start taking those cards away from them, right, you have to be able to pivot. And this is what I mean when we say pivot, is I'm going for an initial strategy. My opponent is taking that away from me. Now I need to switch.
Pivot!
Pivot! Ross, we can't pivot.
That's gonna be part of the gift that we put when we put this podcast on. Pivot!
Pivot!
Can't pivot! Yeah, this is exactly what it is. It's like you pivoting and making your opponent not be able to pivot, because once they realize that they're doing your strategy, it's too late already. Once they realize like, oh, they have better cards than you in terms of that color or that center or that type of that strategy, then it's over already. Like, you can only pivot like maybe once or twice during the game, I would say once,
Yeah.
like once you do it twice, that's way too much, like you have to stick to one, and then if your opponent's doing something, because then that just snowballs, so yeah, just like hate buying, yeah, like I started playing around with it a little bit after you started doing it, and I was just like, yeah, this is devilish. This is like very yeah, just wow, like it's a lot more effective than you think it would be. Sometimes it does backfire because maybe he does actually have better cards than you in terms of that, and then you're just kind of playing second fiddle to his strategy, and then that can always be, I can always make you lose more times than not also. So there is a drawback to trying to hate buy, that your opponent just gets better, better version of your strategy,
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. Because remember, when we say hate buying, you're buying a card that's good for your opponent. That card is not necessarily good for your deck. Really what you're doing is you're saying, I'm going to take this card into my deck to keep it from my opponent. Hopefully it helps. It may not. There's absolutely cards out there that are really good for your opponent's deck, but are like mediocre for your deck. And so you also have to weigh that cost. You're like, is it okay for my opponent to have this card, and then I'm just going to further my own strategy? Or is this card too good and I need to take it on, even though I know it's going to make my deck a little bit worse? And so exactly what you're talking about in terms of win percentages. If I'm a little bit ahead, if my opponent gets that card, he's going to be up here. So I'm going to buy that card and lower my win percentage, but his win percentage is not going to go up. So I'm still ahead, right? But it's a difference of being behind, but both of us have better decks, or being less ahead, but still ahead, but my opponent's deck is still shitty, And that's really what you're trying to figure out. It's better to be, both of you have shitty decks, but you slightly ahead, than it is for both of you to have good decks, but your opponent's ahead.
Yeah. Yeah, that's absolutely right. Sometimes you buy a card and you don't want to buy cards that may be great, just kind of mediocre for your, it'll just kind of raise it a little bit and then it actually drops you. Like, there's also that. You're just like, yeah, I'm gonna buy this 4-cost card or whatever, like a freighter or something like that. It's like, oh yeah, this dude needs trade, and so if I get that, but the thing is, I have already a ton of trade, and so if I get that, that's just gonna bloat my deck because I already get 8 to 10 trade every turn. Like, why do I need another freighter? Like, that's just gonna not do anything. And so you have to also weigh not only the cost reward but you have to see like what does it do to your deck too. So that's why you have to be mindful of the pendulum, of win percentages there. And like I said, I think what I recommend to people is that use it as a tool, use it as like during game when you see those cards that are real. Like if you see a Peacekeeper out there, obviously that's just good for almost any deck. But
Peacekeeper's amazing, yeah.
I'm just saying.
I'm gonna get it anyway.
Right? Yeah, that would be great. That's an exception to the rule. But I'm just saying, like, you have to really see opportune times in which you can use that. I think it's much more valuable as something that you just take out once in a while, once or twice in the game, rather than using it as a strategy over and over again. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Like if that's your main strategy, you'll end up making a deck that's actually not that good. You're like, oh, my opponent's buying trade, I should get trade. And then you just end up having a weaker deck than your opponent. So what I would say in terms of hate buying is there comes a point where if your opponent like pretty much realizes their strategy, hate buying is not really effective anymore because they're already good. Like their deck is already good. And so if you hate buy, you're just making your deck worse. Like their deck is already fantastic. So, I hate bought them. You end up going below where you were.
Yeah.
Whereas, if you just bought a card that's really good for your deck, then your deck is that much better. And so now instead of lowering yourself, you're keeping pace. And so what I would say is hate buying is something you want to do maybe about 2-3 times a game. Like it's not a strategy where that's your main strategy. It's something where you recognize you're like, oh wait, that card is really good for my opponent. Oh man, I was gonna buy this card, but no, I'm gonna keep that card away. It's important I keep that card.
We're gonna talk about self-scrappers. Yep.
Yeah, let's talk about self-scrappers. Pat, you got any favorites?
Yeah, so self-scrappers are cards that basically scrap themselves. Like they will have great effects when you scrap them, and they do a secondary effect of actually unweighting your deck because you don't have to keep them. Like there's so many favorite ones. I think I'm just gonna highlight a couple. Like one of my favorites definitely, and I know you'll agree with this, is actually Mobile Market.
Oh yeah.
Like Mobile Market, I don't know who put this in the game or what was the thought behind it,
Fantastic.
but it's freaking ridiculous to trade. And when you scrap it, and you can like scrap it like every time because it gives you 2 heal, and also you get to put it in your discard pile at the end of the turn, right?
Yeah,
exactly. And so like what this does is it's not only like an unweighted card practically, like it gives you 2 trade, and it can act as defense for if you need it. So it's one of the most versatile cards in the game, if not like top 3 versatile cards in the game, just because it can do so much. And so that's one of my favorites. I like anything that you can put like bases in your deck, bases in your hand. So Long Hauler, definitely that's a behemoth right there. That's really good. And let's see. Yeah, anything that can draw cards like that, like just kind of like a, enforcer mech, allows you to draw a card, and it's a scrapper too, so it just kind of does double duty. And yeah, I mean those are pretty much. There's so many of them that are out there, and I'm sure there's a lot of stuff that we can review over time with those self scrappers. How about you, Ryan? Do you have any favorite ones?
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I mean, initially, just you're a classic explorer.
Oh yeah, of course.
Quite good.
Yeah, solid first turn buys. Anytime.
Good first turn buy, and it's I like explorers because it's rare that I'm going to keep them more than 1 turn. Usually, I'll just play it, scrap it, get the 2 damage, get the card out of your deck, and that's really why self scrappers are so good and are such an advantage, even though they may not seem like it. It's just like, well, why did I buy this card and I'm gonna throw it away? The whole point is that it's not weighing down your deck in the future. Explorers, when you first buy them and when you first play them, are really good, but they go down in value so much over time. You do not want to be drawing this later when you could be drawing a Blob Alpha. What you want to do is use your Explorer to buy the Blob Alpha and then get the fuck out of there. So that way you can draw your Blob Alpha that much faster.
Yeah.
Other cards, a card of similar vein, Blob Miner, same idea, right?
Yeah.
Get the trade, and then once you buy that big card, get this out of here, take the 2 damage, move on. A card like the Stinger, this one's nice too because it has a lot of damage. It has 6 damage.
Yeah, I was thinking about showcasing that one too.
Gives you that 1 extra trade if you really want it.
It's really good.
It's good. Yeah, it's nice.
Super
it's versatile. And like when you decide you don't want this card anymore, get rid of it.
Yeah.
I'm more likely to keep this, than I would.
6 damage, like for 1 cost. Oh my god.
Potentially. So this is a card that you might want to stick around more.
Like way better than the Skeef.
Yeah, way better than the Skeef, right? A card like Builderbot. I think this one's really great. It gives
I have
you that
one too.
Trade.
Exactly.
Right? It gives you that 1 trade. It scraps in the trade row, potentially gives you 2 trade. But when you're ready to get rid of it, boom, get rid of it.
Like it's just not, I mean, any card that gives you 3 effects, 4 effects, like that is valuable,
Valuable. It's really valuable. And that's really the whole point of these self-scrapping cards is they give you the effect, and then once you don't need that effect, they get out of the way. They're like really good supporting cast. They come in, they say their lines, they do their role, and then they're out of there.
Yeah. So like it's just I would say like my favorite all time like self scrapper is Frigate. Like I think it's just solid. gives you 4 damage. Our target opponent discards a card, allies, two more damage, and then draws. Like that's like an emergency card. That can be an engine card. Like, just definitely one of my favorites of all time from the original vanilla deck. And you just want that. You want your self scrappers to be like these flavor explosions. You want them to just kind of come out and be like starburst. Like, oh yeah, it's great, and then it's gone. Like boom, boom, boom. And sometimes those splashes, they make the difference in momentum. They might give you just enough momentum to overtake your opponent. Those are when it gets down to the nitty gritty and you need to win by 1 or 2 authority. Like, those are the cards that make the difference. Did I have a little more splash than my opponent did?
Yeah, because you may need that one emergency card draw. You may need that extra little bit of damage to kill a base or something. That happens a lot.
You know what's a good one? Aging Battle. Oh, that's a baby right there. I don't know how many times the Aging Battleship has has like saved my butt. Like, it's 5 damage and draw a card. Draw a card if you ally, and then a draw to +2 damage. What is that? Like, it just boggles the mind. Like, that card is like a masterpiece. A masterpiece. Even though it's like weighted at first, it's just like, it's like Frigga 2.0, like, it's freaking amazing. Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's good because, like, if you need to close out the game, you can do it.
Yeah.
If you need to try to come back, if you need that extra card draw, just to try to pick up a 8-drop or something, it gives it to you. Here it is, Aging Battleship.
Oh, that's a bay.
Okay. There's bay.
That's an old bay.
Oldie but a goodie.
Oldie bay. That's like your grandma.
And this is underrated too. It has a card draw, ally card draw.
Yeah, that's what I meant. That's what I was like, yeah, ally card draw. Like, it's a bay. Like
another one that's really awesome, Gunship.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's a bay too.
Right.
Like,
scrap to give you 4 damage. And so this, a lot of times, this is get the Emperor's Dreadnought, get Brain World, get Command Ship.
Yeah, that's an automatic. Like I said, it's the gateway to the 8.
Yeah. And that's what these self-scrap cards are, right?
It's kind of a cool name.
Yeah, they're like a gateway. They're like the
gateway
to the
road, 8. I'm going to coin that term right now. It's a gateway to the 8. That's a freighter does that too.
Yeah, it's a gate to the 8. That's
gate to the 8. Yeah, exactly. There you go. That's the term. Gate to the 8. Gate to the 8.
Gate to the 8.
I came up with that.
Right? That's what Gunship is, man. It is a gate to the 8. It opens the gate. You walk on through. You go grab that 8-drop on the later turns, man.
New Star Wars terminology. Gate to the 8.
Yep. We just invented it.
We just invented it just now.
Credit Dreadcuter Podcast. And that's what's great about these cards is they have their effect, and then when you want to get rid of them, you can get rid of them. And what I would say for most people is you want to get rid of them pretty darn fast. Gunship is a card you'd kind of want to keep around, but a card like Builderbot, get the scrap and then get it out of there. Scrapping this card, getting a scrap, and then scrapping this card is like 2 scraps if you think about it.
Mm-hmm.
Cards like Blob Miner or Explorer, just play them, buy that big card, and then just get them the fuck out of there. The more efficient you can make your deck faster, the better. And that's why these cards are so good.
That's why they're awesome sauce. Yeah.
Yeah. So you should want to value cards that scrap themselves more than their equivalent cards that don't, because those cards are weighted, whereas these cards eventually, will get rid of themselves, and then you've just made your deck that much more efficient. You've bought a better card, and then you made your deck efficient. Boom. All right. Now we're going to talk about opportunity cost, which basically means when you buy a card, how much time does it actually take for you to realize the card's value? And really, this is sort of a difference. This is the main difference between cards that provide you trade and cards that provide you damage. So when you buy a card that provides you trade, you're spending that turn's trade to then later on get more trade. Then after that, you're going to spend that trade to buy cards that either deal damage or scrap or base, something like that. So you're spending 2 turns before you realize the value of your trade cards. Whereas with cards that provide you with damage, when you first buy them, you put it in your discard pile, and then when you draw them, boom, damage. You've immediately realized its potential. And so that's what we mean when we say opportunity cost, is you have to realize there are certain types of cards that are going to activate faster than other types of cards. What are your thoughts on that, Pat?
Yeah, with trade, like you want to buy them. You want to buy them right before they cycle. Like my thought is like, hey, you know, trade actually takes time. So when you buy it, you want to make sure you get it on the next couple turns. Otherwise, you're just going to be so far outpaced by your opponent, who's already getting maybe the 3, 4, 5 cost cards, and they're already doing damage. Like their potential gets realized a lot faster. When you buy trade, your potential it takes time for it to manifest itself, and that goes for not only trade but like scrapping. You know, you buy a scrap card when you just cycled. You're not going to see that scrap card for at least like 2, 3, 4, even 5 turns down the line. You know, remember there's games where like I would buy Brain World like mid game, right? And I would buy Brain World right when we cycled. Now, like 3 turns down the line, like I shuffle my deck and I'm like, yeah, I'm going to get a Brain World. Well, it doesn't work like that. You might bottom deck it, and then it may end up being 6 turns before you get to see 1 Brain World. Like, are you kidding me? You know, so
Yeah, right.
That's why I ended up losing that game, because I only cycled Brain World once, you know? And so, like, the relative cost of a card actually lowers based on where you buy it on the, you know, in your discard pile. And so, like, you know, any card will be devalued when you buy it off a cycle. Now, they get valued more when you're about to cycle, right? Because you get the chance to just play that right away almost, you know? That's why the cards that are top deck, the cards that you can get right into your hand, that's why they're so valuable, because you get to skip that whole process, you know? So those are really my thoughts about the cycle potential. And so you always want to see like where you're putting these cards and what are opportune times to buy, and also see what let's go back to mindfulness. I'm always going to keep on stressing that. What is your opponent's cycle ability? You know, if you see that the Brain World's out, but then he already cycled, you know, he might get that card, but that might actually stunt his deck for a while, you know, because he's not going to be able to use it, you know. Not to say don't buy Brain World. I'm just saying that it becomes way less valuable.
Yeah, you may like your initial plan might be to buy Brain World, and then when you have the opportunity to buy Brain World, you've just triggered a cycle. Now you know, shit, a Brain World's not coming out for 2 or 3 turns. So it's far less valuable in that sense. I would be more inclined, I'm not saying you don't buy Brain World, but what I'm saying is maybe you just buy a couple of damage cards and you're like, all right, you know what? Instead of trying to scrap, I'm just going to try to deal damage. You know, it may alter your plans. And so you always want to be looking at your deck, seeing how many cards are left, and realizing that if I buy this card, how long is it going to be before I see that card?
Mm-hmm.
You know, so when you have, you know, when the next turn is going to trigger a cycle, all the cards that you buy on that turn become up in value, because you know that you're going to see them faster than you would if you bought them a couple of turns ago. You know, and this is why cards that draw and discard, or just straight up draw, are really good, because they get you that much closer to cycling your deck and seeing all those cards that you just bought again. And so really the main thing is realizing that when you buy this card, how long is it going to be before I can see that value? So in the initial trade row, the cards that you buy there, you're going to see them 3, 4, 5, 6 times. cards that you buy later in the game, you might only see once. You might not see them at all, you know? And so what ends up happening is you want to do a lot of your initial buys are great, but if you're halfway through the game and you're still buying 2, 3, 4 cards, you're probably not even going to see those cards.
This is why I have this is why like I should come up with like the scrap rules, like it should be like a mini book, like Cardinal Sins. One of the cardinal sins of buying scraps is actually not to buy them late game, like the other cardinal sin is like buying more than 3 scrappers, like that's another one of my rules. But what I'm saying is that, and I've seen some people do this, and I just kind of cringe when I see that, because they're just not going to see it. They're just not going to see it. Like, it just becomes a weighted card. Like, what are you trying to do? If you're trying to heal, it just doesn't work. If you're trying to find damage and you have like a dinky like little scrapper card, you're not going to find that damage. Like, it's just useless. I just don't see any real scenario where you would buy dinky 1 to 3 scrapper cards late game. You need those early to mid. If you're trying to scrap mid to late, it's already over.
It's too late.
There's an opportune time to buy the scrapper, and if you're mid game and you're trying to buy like a scrapper card right before you cycle, like that is the most opportune time, because then you'll have a chance to draw it and still be able to utilize 2, 3, or 4 scraps.
So this is why there's a huge difference between cards that cost 5 and cards that cost 6. Like, if you ever look at the power level between 5-cost cards and 6-cost cards, the 6-cost cards are significantly more powerful than the 5-cost cards. And the reason for that is because you can only have 5 trade on your initial trade row, right? That's the most you can have in the early game. So in order to get a 6-cost card, you have to buy trade and then draw that trade to then get a 6-cost card, 6-cost or higher. And so what ends up happening, and so what they've done is they've built in the idea that it's going to take you an extra turn to realize the value of a 6-cost card. So they have to make them a little bit more powerful, because you're not going to get as many shots at it. When you buy that initial Explorer or Blob Miner or whatever it is, you're going to get to draw that a lot because you drew it on your first turn. And the assumption is that you're going to have an X number of turns before the game's over. And so you'll have access to that Blob Miner many, many times. Whereas by the time you get enough trade to get a 7-cost, 8-cost card, you may only see it once or twice. So those effects have to be really, really strong to make up for the opportunity cost that you lost having to buy trade and then having to buy that card and then having to draw the card and then playing it and then getting its effect. So like, there's so many like barriers to that card coming out.
Yeah, I mean, unless you're like playing, cabaret style, and you get the 8-cost card in the beginning. You're playing with all the gambits and
all that other shit.
I got Nano
Brain World, okay.
Yeah, Nano Best Storm, like right away. It's Psycho. I got
Quasar, 2 Quasars. What?
And I've had that. Like it's insane. Like in like less than 5 turns, I would get a deck that is crispy. And I'm like, ooh, what do I do with that? That is a whole new problem. But I'm just saying, like, it's interesting. Yeah. So that's why you have and that was one of the original features of the game. Is that ability to the opportunity cost of getting lots of trade, so that you can get those big cards. And as you said, like being able to use them even like 2, 3, or 4 times will make up for the difference of not being able to use them in the first like 15 turns or so.
Guys, thank you so much for listening and watching the Dreadcuter Podcast.
Thank you for scrapping your way through our podcast. We really appreciate you spending our time just chilling with our geekiness over here.
Like, subscribe, and we'll see you next time.